What shocked me when I started social work is that there wasn't clinical supervision.
What would you say are some of the key signs that a social worker might be experiencing burnout?
I've experienced it in local authorities where you'll be in one toilet cubicle and you'll hear someone sobbing in the next cubicle. But when you all leave that toilet, you wouldn't believe anyone was crying.
I think it's so important that you're highlighting this.
So sometimes it's a little bit gory and it's a little bit sad and it's heartbreaking. Sometimes people are kind of shamed into like, oh, you've only been doing this for a short amount of time. How can you be burnt out already?
Hello and welcome to the Arise and Shine podcast. Today I am joined with Bianca McKay, social worker, career coach and entrepreneur. Bianca, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast today. As you're already aware, I'm keen to help individuals develop confidence and resilience in all walks of life, including their careers and businesses.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of experience as a social worker, but you also have a lot of experience as an entrepreneur. So today I want us to get straight into the discussion about your journey as a social worker and incorporating entrepreneurship into that. So, can you share a bit about your background in social work and what inspired you to start helping social workers develop a side hustle?
So firstly, thank you for having me. Two of my favourite topics, entrepreneurship and social work. So I'm happy to talk about those. My journey, it started just under 11 years ago. But I'd given up my previous career as a counsellor in schools to be a social worker. So I came in and money was on my mind. I'm not going to pretend. I know the notion in social work is we're in it for the outcome, not the income. And I do agree with that. But we also need to survive. And 3 years in, I loved what I was doing. I was probably working overtime out of choice based on the passion that I had because I was working with children in care in a care team. And I just felt like, yes, I'm making a difference. But I won awards for the work that I was doing, newly qualified social worker of the year, social worker of the year. But was it making it easier to pay my bills? No. And honestly, for me, I thought, okay, you're using a lot of your brain on problem solving, crisis and risk management, go, 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 go. Like I say, I'm passionate, but then I was thinking, what else can I do to bring in additional income? Because I don't want to fall out of love with what I'm doing because I'm struggling financially. We've still got, student loans and, debts racked up on that journey. And I'd gone back and done my master's and used all my savings to do that. So I was like, I need some additional income now. Even with accolades, even with promotions, after the taxman, it was proven to be quite difficult to see the praise in the pounds, and that is what led me to starting my side hustle. And plus I wanted something that I wasn't always serious with. Social work is serious by virtue of what we do.
Yeah.
Always, dealing with a problem in society. But having a side hustle helped me to balance that a little bit. And that's how my journey started.
Amazing. And what personal experiences or observations led you to focus on burnout in the profession?
What shocked me, and probably because I came from a therapeutic background, but what shocked me when I started social work is that there wasn't clinical supervision to talk about, not necessarily just supervision to talk about the people we're working with, but actually to talk about the emotions, to talk about the impact on yourself as a practitioner. When you go into places that you see things that you maybe wouldn't have seen before in life, or you hear things that you wouldn't have heard before. You're in a courtroom and you have to look at a lot of evidence. And sometimes it's a little bit gory and it's a little bit sad and it's heartbreaking. And you don't just switch off at the end of the day. So it shocks me to not have clinical supervision that looks at that aspect of things, not just how you're progressing with a family and whether or not you've got the outcomes for that child or that family, but how do you feel? And I think it's so important because it then affects how you show up as a practitioner, and it can make you non-judgmental or too judgmental if you're not kind of delving deep into those emotions. And that's what made me realize that for me, that's a sharp, quick way to get to burnout if you're not looking at those issues. And that's what also made me focus on burnout. So when I came into helping social workers, I wanted to look at the two areas that I felt were most important.
Yeah.
Burnout being one, and also having additional income as well.
Cool, amazing. And so, as you've just, highlighted, burnout is a common issue in social work. So what would you say are some of the key signs that a social worker might be experiencing burnout?
I think you get two types of people. You get people that go on and on and on and kind of fake it till they make it and they put on a facade. for a long time, and then burnout hits them like a ton of bricks suddenly. But then you get those people that burn out gradually too. It's the lack of sleep, it's the lack of appetite, it's the lack of being able to switch off from work and have even part of a balance. I'm not going to say it's going to be a work-life balance that is ideal for everybody, but if you're at home and you're still thinking about work, you're supposed to be out celebrating an occasion with family or friends, but you're still thinking about work. You feel as though you're not getting anything done. It's never enough. You can't stop. You feel guilty all the time. You can't sleep because all you're thinking about is work. To me, that's a clear sign of burnout. And also when your decision making is skewed slightly and you feel like you don't have that clarity of mind to make decisions that are evidence-based, but are also what you know is your sound judgment, and you're doubting that, then I feel like that's signs of burnout as well. And then also, I've experienced it in local authorities where you'll be in one toilet cubicle and you'll hear someone sobbing in the next cubicle.
Wow.
But when you all leave that toilet, you wouldn't believe anyone was crying, you know? So it's all of that. Sometimes the subtle things, but it's also the things that are more obvious, that get swept under the carpet. And some people do sadly suffer in silence with it.
And just following on from that, what do you think are the biggest contributors to burnout in the field of social work?
There's so many contributing factors, but I would say the attitude that all social workers need to be resilient and prove their level of resilience by just continuously going on regardless. No matter how they feel, no matter how comfortable or uncomfortable they might feel about a situation, just having to prove that resilience by continuing. The show must go on. And it is a fact. We do know that, you know, people's lives don't pause where we can just say, actually, I need a moment. But it's about that support outside of the scenario that is lacking. And for me, that is a key problem there. There's an expectation to always be resilient. There's an expectation that you're going to manage the workload 365 days of the year, 24/7, no matter what. If the crisis happens, it doesn't really matter to some employers what you have to do personally that evening or that weekend. It's a crisis, get on with it. All of that doesn't allow the person to then regulate their nervous system again because it's constant fight or flight, go, 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 go. And for me, because it happens a lot, it's normalized. So like I say, it's just like, you're supposed to be resilient. Come on, move on, you know, get over whatever's happened. And I don't think that that's a safe way of practicing.
I 100% agree with you. I have a friend in this space and, you know, she does complain about that, the level of work and the impact it's having on her family. So I think it's so important that you're highlighting this. And so how does burnout impact not just the individual, but also their clients and the quality of care they provide?
I think it definitely has a direct impact on the decisions that people make. And those decisions then impact upon our clients, our service users, the people that we try to support. Without a clear head, without that clarity and sound judgment, is very difficult, from my opinion, for people to make the decisions that are in the best interests of children, families, vulnerable adults. I think because there is a lot of work to do, because a lot of people, as I say, want to keep proving that they're capable. Sometimes it could be that you're not paying as much attention to detail, or it could be that you don't have the time to even build those detailed, in-depth relationships with people where you feel like you do know them well enough to make a decision about their lives. You can start to get to the point where you assume, I've kind of seen this scenario before, so maybe it will be a similar outcome. Let me go down the same path that we've gone down, rather than treating each person as an individual and each circumstance as an individual. And then on top of that, having reflection time, to be able to, instead of just going from one task to the next because there's so much work, being able to pause and say, actually, what did I learn from that last interaction with that family member? What can I do differently? You know, it's just, there's a lack of that time to just sit and be. And again, for me, that does impact upon how it feels to have a social worker. We talk a lot about not doing to people and doing with people. But if you're on the verge of burnout and you feel like you're not getting as much done as you need to, and you know there's not enough hours in a day, that human element can be lost a little bit.
Yeah, it's a challenge with a large volume of work.
It is.
And are there any misconceptions about burnout that you would like to address?
The only misconception that I think comes up time and time again is that if you get burnout quite early on in your career, you're not a good social worker. I don't like to place that judgment on people because you don't know what's going on for them outside of the actual sector of work, and you don't know how well they've been prepared for the role either. But sometimes people are kind of shamed into like, oh, you've only been doing this for a short amount of time. How can you be burnt out already? You know, and it's like, it's not about pointing the finger. It's about what do we do with this high level of burnout in this profession, full stop. It doesn't matter if they've been in the game 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Ultimately, we need better strategies to manage trauma in the workplace. Our roles are based on managing trauma, but we just don't have that support there as often as we should, I don't think. So yeah, the misconception is time. You should be like in this game 10 years before you burn out, not necessarily. I see newly qualified social workers burning out, sadly. Some persevere to get through it and stay in the profession. Others say, I'm just not doing this and I'm going to
Just
leave.
leave.
Yeah, so time is not a factor. It's about that individual and what the support they have.
And just on that then, so what are some practical strategies that social workers can use to prevent or recover from burnout?
So I would say in terms of preventing burnout, if I was a newly qualified social worker, and I say this to some of my mentees, start as you mean to go on. You're going to be passionate. You're going to be excited. I know that feeling. But at the same time, as soon as you blur those lines of how long you're willing to work late, for example, the hours you're willing to do, as soon as you don't have those boundaries, whatever you do once, you're expected to do time and time and time and time again.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to start as you mean to go on, have those boundaries. That prevents you from being that person that can't say no. Getting into the habit of advocating for yourself and others. We come into social work like we want to save the world. We want to help the world. I don't know a selfish social worker. Maybe I'm biased, but I don't. So I feel like if we can advocate for ourselves as much as we can advocate for everybody else, then we are then better able to say, oh, I can't manage this, or, oh, I'm struggling, or can I do this next week, or what do you want me to prioritize,
Yeah.
So just having a voice, really, having a boundary and having a voice in terms of prevention, and then recovery, giving yourself that time, not pretending that everything's okay if it's not. If you know you're not sleeping at night, you're not eating, you're not interacting with people, work is taking over your life, reach out and ask for help. There are people out there that are there to happily support you inside and outside of your organization.
Because some people don't feel comfortable asking for help within the organization. So if you are struggling, you don't necessarily need to touch base with someone in the organization. You can lean on support systems outside of the organization.
Absolutely.
How can having clear personal and professional goals help in overcoming burnout?
I feel like when you have clarity of where you're trying to get to, you can kind of reverse engineer it. You know what it should feel like at each stage. You know what you're expecting to achieve. You know how you're expecting to feel. So if you said, I'm starting out now, I'm going to be a team manager in say 3 or 4 years, you know that hopefully when you get there, you're going to be feeling good about yourself. You're going to be feeling like you've achieved something. You've developed new skills. You're, developing on your skill set. If it doesn't feel like that, then it's time to pause and say, actually, what do I need to do differently? But without having those goals set, it's impossible to do that review of yourself. It's impossible to kind of consider whether you're on track or not on track, whether you feel good, don't feel good, whether your well-being's intact or not, So I think short and long-term goals, and also having your tribe, not just for when times get tough, but also just for holding you accountable for those goals. I don't think you should go into anything blindly and just hoping for the best. I think it's good to have an intention. Yes, you can be flexible with that, but it's good to have an intention of what you're hoping to achieve and your tribe around you to hold you accountable to that.
Amazing. And what does the role of self-care play in managing burnout? And how can social workers realistically integrate it in their busy schedules?
I always encourage social workers to set something that is realistic for you, because everyone's routine is different. Some people are very much early birds, morning people.
Like myself.
Like yourself. Not so much me. So in the mornings, I don't want to interact with many people. That's part of my self-care, protecting my morning and evening routine where I'm not talking, because everything that I do involves a lot of interacting. So I know that I need that time for myself to just have that quiet time. That for me is self-care. Putting things in my routine, as small as they may be, that give me time to pour back into myself. And then in that time when I'm doing that, protecting it at all costs. Sometimes I feel bad, and it's taken me a while to get to that point where, for example, if I'm in the gym, I try not to talk to people outside of that gym space, obviously, but I try not to be on the phone or be doing anything else because I just want to work out. I just want to focus on what I'm doing for me because otherwise my brain's constantly going. So I always say to people, find your thing. Sometimes it's listening to music on your own or dancing on your own or spending time with friends. That's still self-care because it's pouring back into a part of you that you feel you need more of that thing. But if you don't identify what it is, again, you can't work towards it. It doesn't have to be things that take hours. Like I love going to spas. Um, I know we can't do that every single day though. So I have to think of what can I do on a daily that slowly just pours more and more back into me so that my cup doesn't end up completely empty and then I can't give to anybody else, you know? Um, and also, I have a triple R retreat to help people reflect, recover and recharge, preventing and recovering from burnout. It's how much people are willing to invest in themselves to do those things. Because sometimes I know I'm not the only person, there's opportunities out there, but sometimes people feel a bit guilty pouring into themselves, taking that time or spending that money. And for me, it's about investment. You have to have that mindset of investing in yourself.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. My mornings, as you I'm an early riser. Yes, I am part of the 5 a.m. club, but the morning slot is my slot.
Yes.
And, there's no social media or anything like that. It's just quiet time with my creator and spending time with myself. And it's so important. So thank you for touching on that. Can you share a success story of a social worker who overcame burnout and found a renewed passion for their work?
Yeah, so one of my beautiful mentees, she's been a social worker for over 20 years, 22 years to be precise. And she came to me and she said, this isn't working for me anymore. She's gone through so many different teams. She's done everything that she thinks she needs to do. She just had it. But what does she do next? And, from getting to know her, she did my 12-week program. We had a lovely time. We actually went to a spa as part of it because self-care had to be on the menu because all the stuff that she'd been pouring out, it's like, yeah, it's time to give back to you. So we did some work on mindset. And by the time we finished, she could identify that she had interest in other areas of social work that she'd never had a chance to explore. So now she works for a child and adolescent mental health service where she can still use her social work skills, but she had the confidence to then go for roles like that, the confidence to accept the training and support they were offering, the course that they provide for a year so that she's equipped to then do the job again in a new way, And for me, how experienced she was, she could have stayed in the local authority social work because it's a comfort zone. But to see her transform and be willing to build that confidence and say, actually, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And she was a person that I saw her out in public and she'd seen that I do mentoring. She kept looking over. She's very shy, reserved lady. And I remember saying, why does this lady keep looking like, do I know her from somewhere? And when she finally came over, to remember her from there, where she was like, I was so nervous to come over to now, where she's got the new job, she's enjoying it, using her skills in a new way. She's got that passion. She's not dreading getting up every morning. I love it. Like those kind of transformations, they keep me going.
That's amazing, Bianca. It's all about impacting lives in a positive way. So moving on to side hustles. How can starting a side hustle help social workers maintain their well-being and avoid burnout?
I always feel some people have side hustles and on my program, I don't say which way you should go. I think people will know their own skills and passions. But for me, when it's not social work related, it does pour into your self-care a bit more. When your side hustle is social work related, like court assessments, for example, you're still in that social work mode. Or articles, blogs, things like that, you're still in social work mode. But when it comes to something completely different, especially if it can be something creative, it definitely pours back into your self-care. You're not only using a different part of your brain, but you're just in a different world. And I think it allows you to switch off. A lot of us, like 3 years in, I started a side hustle baking. I didn't start off baking because I could bake. It was literally a candy cone business for all the little cousins in my family's birthdays. And that went on to, can you do cupcakes? Can you do cupcakes? And then from there, went on to a baking business. But at least I was able to use the creative side of my brain. I realised how much I'd missed that because the rest of my life is reports and serious things. Teaching myself how to do something without that judgment. It was just like, you're free, So I think if you can find something that you are passionate about, that you're interested in, or that you're curious about even, and monetize that, that still pours into your self-care, especially when it's not a social work related side hustle.
Amazing. And what are the common side hustles that social workers can pursue without feeling overwhelmed? Because you've already got a lot of work.
Yeah, it's true. I always say do something that you can create once and continue to earn from. So there has to be something that you know that somebody else would be interested in learning. And whether it's an ebook or a guide, whether it's a short course that you record, whatever you do, record it once and then focus on your marketing. And a lot of that can be systemized and automated. And I teach that on the program. You don't have to do everything where you're constantly physically involved and constantly present, because again, that would contradict everything I'm saying about self-care, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
So I encourage people to put systems in place so that they don't have to always be in the thick of things. But as I say, for social workers that are very busy, create once, continue to earn from it. There's other things as well, like I have a travel business. Whatever I do and was doing last year for that, in terms of growing the team, I continue to be paid residually for that. It's important to look for those nuggets. There are things that you don't have to be working like it's another full-time job, but you all obviously have to put the effort in to do the groundwork, to build. But as I say, if you can create something once and earn later, or get something where you're involved, but you've done the work and you're earning residually from it afterwards, can only be a good thing.
I agree. And technology has changed the game. You know, we've got, whether it's using your laptop or Wi-Fi, technology has changed the game for us to, you know, create online businesses where we can get that reoccurring income. So how can social workers balance, the full-time job, which is already very busy, with the side hustle without adding more stress to their lives?
I'll be honest and say the beginning, it will be stressful because you're bringing something new into your routine. But for me, it's about mindset. Sometimes things will get stressful and they will get hard, but it's about remembering why you're doing it. Because the easiest thing to do at that point is actually, I'm not going to bother with this. I'm not going to bother with this self-care routine where I get up 15 minutes earlier to have that time for myself. I'm not going to bother with the side hustle routine because it's just taking up too much of my time. But then you have to think, what was it that made me want to do that in the first place? You know? So for me, it's going to get hard. It's going to get stressful at times, but it's your mindset to know that actually this moment isn't going to last forever. And in the long run, is this going to benefit me to stick to the plan? So I would say mindset definitely helps, as well as just having that feeling of you've got something else to contribute to the world, and maybe you're hiding that from them by not having that side hustle up and running. The amount of people, one of my mentees, she's an attestician. I always struggle with that word. I've known her for about 8 years prior to her coming on my program, and she finally rang me and said, "You know what, B, I need a side hustle." I couldn't believe the skills she had that she'd been sitting on, doing nothing with that. Now she's helping social workers when they're stressed and they want a bit of pampering. They're going to her to get their facials and stuff like that. For me, that was something that you was hiding from people. They love the fact that you're a social worker too, and that they're pouring into your business, but you're also using that skill set that you had hidden. It's kind of depriving people. You have to look at it as whatever you've got, somebody wants it, you know? So yeah, I think that's important too, getting into that mindset of I've got something that somebody wants. It's stressful, but look at what's going to be on the other side. It's impacting a different way.
Essentially, you need a mindset shift at the outset, because there's going to be a lot of work to do at the front end. But once you overcome that hurdle and you fully understand the side hustle, or, you know, the automations or how the business is running, it gets easier, right?
Absolutely does get easier. There's no way I'd do multiple without it being easier. Definitely not. Because it would feel like a chore, you know? So yeah, I agree.
And just going back to goal setting, because I know that's one of your favorite topics. How does goal setting play a role in successfully managing a side hustle alongside your social work?
Just keeps you focused and on track. As I say, I don't think you can, without having that goal, you don't know what direction to go in. It's just a vision without the actual plan towards that goal. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you might see something and think, like, that would be nice. I would love to do that one day. But without the goal that I'm actually going to do it, and this is when I'm going to do it by, it is just a thought. It's a fleeting moment of, that would be good. And then that fleeting moment keeps coming back until you set the goal, and actually then within that goal, set the plan to reach it. Do you know what I mean? I just don't see how people achieve anything without a goal.
So basically, wishful thinking isn't enough.
Basically, yeah. It's not enough.
Okay, so in terms of long-term goals and short-term goals, how should social workers approach that?
I'm quite fixed in my notion on this, to be honest. I think it's good to have a 5-year plan. And then from there, break it down into smaller goals. My one-to-one mentoring program is focused specifically on that 5-year plan and the blueprint to get there to whatever it is that they want to achieve. It's very important, I think, when you look at short-term goals, if you only have short-term, it's very easy to watch what everybody else is doing. this person's trying to be a team leader, or this person's trying to be a practice educator, or this person's trying to do this or that. And you look at that in the short term, but you can get misled onto a different path and suddenly think, oh, actually, this course is 2-3 years to be a practice educator. That's not actually what I wanted to do. But you did it because the rest of the cohort was doing it. You have to have your 5-year plan of where you're trying to get to, so you can make the decisions, the short-term decisions that lead you to that 5-year goal, if that makes sense. Other than that, again, you'll just lose track, you'll lose focus if you're only focusing on the short term, from my perspective.
So in the first instance, have a 5-year plan,
Yeah.
that being the long-term goal,
Yeah.
but have shorter term goals that will essentially help you to reach that.
Precisely.
Okay.
So see it like a roadmap. So the long-term goal is the destination in 5 years, but you've got your pit stops in between to review how you're getting on, make sure there's certain things you're going to have to do. So for social workers, if they were listening to this, I would say if you're wanting to be an independent reviewing officer and a child protection chair, for example, you know, to get to that point, you need to be a team manager at some point, you need to have safeguarding experience, and you need to have children in care experience. So then you reverse engineer it. You're going to need space in those two teams because they're opposite ends of the social work, not opposite ends, but they're different parts of a child's journey. So you would need time in the social work team for safeguarding, time experienced in working with children in care, and time as a team manager to then get to that 5-year goal.
Oh.
Do you see what I mean? If you just look at the short term, I'm going to take this vacancy because it's in this team, or that vacancy because it's in that team, it can distract you from the teams you need to be in to get that longer term goal accomplished. Do you see what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, it's very easy for you to get distracted.
100%. Just to add to that, it's easy for us to get distracted, but also the organisations we work with, everybody has their own goals. They have a children and young people's plan or an adult mental health and wellbeing plan of what they want to achieve for the organisation. So naturally, the employees are expected to fit in line with that. If we're focusing on one thing, we focus on that. But what if your individual goal is something slightly different? You need to know what it is. Otherwise, you're just swept away with whatever the new initiative is. Yes, you want to work with your team and organisation on a common goal, but you don't want to forget what your individual goal is too.
And I guess that's where self-awareness comes in.
Yeah.
And understanding yourself.
Exactly.
So can you share some goal setting techniques that have worked well for the people that you've coached?
Listening. Stepping out your comfort zone. Most people, it's hard because I don't want to seem like I'm being harsh, but I think without the accountability of somebody else to say, actually, you can do that. And actually, are you taking the easy route by doing this or that? You need somebody else with you with goal setting, and you need somebody who's going to listen to you, but also push you out your comfort zone. I'm not saying it has to be a mentor or a coach, but it has to be somebody. If you're keeping your goals to yourself, and I say this to all my mentees, it's not going to happen because there's no one to hold you accountable. But if you voice it, I'll go on my stories or on a live and say something because I know that once I've said it, I have to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I would say as a goal setting tip, don't keep it to yourself. Speak to people around you. Find someone that you trust. You know, as I said, I always say about finding your tribe. My whole VIP community that I've built is based on that notion of people that hold you accountable, people that will celebrate your wins, as well as people that if you're having a low are there to listen to you in a safe space. Find your people, find your tribe and tell them this is what I want to achieve. But don't be scared to say it. Because once you step out your comfort zone, that's where the change happens, you know?
Accountability partners. I've been running away from that for a long time. So I need to get on top of that. But I think personally for me, I've always been quite a goal-getter anyway.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite motivated to achieve things alone. But since being part of, as you say, a tribe, a mastermind group, I have been encouraged to, you know, have an accountability partner just so that one, you know, I've got someone to touch base with and it ensures that I'm on track to achieve my short-term and long-term goals.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the pitfalls to avoid when setting goals related to career and your personal well-being?
Pitfalls to avoid: working in isolation in any capacity. As I've said, making sure that you've got someone around you. I know you've given yourself as an example where you're very focused, you're very diligent, you're very, I'm going to get this achieved regardless.
Yeah.
All of that is a bonus for you. Not everybody is the same though.
Yeah,
I feel if you kind of do it alone, that's where you kind of get hiccups sometimes, where you can kind of push a goal to the side because it's easier to say, I'm actually having a really tough time. Not going to bother. But if somebody else is there to say, actually, you're having a tough time, take this day or two and then get back onto it, there's a different level of encouragement. But I also think just generally being self-full. It's not selfish to pour that time into your goals. I think sometimes, again, there's that notion that if you're taking too much time pouring into yourself, it's selfish to do that. And a lot of social workers feel like that because we're used to helping people, but you need that time to focus on yourself with your goals. Otherwise, as I say, you end up stuck. And everybody else around you might be advancing and progressing as you're helping them, but you're not doing that for yourself, which gets frustrating.
So if a social worker who's currently, tuned in, listening today, feels completely burned out, but they're unsure where to start, what would be your first piece of advice?
They're completely burned out and they don't know where to start. I would say speak to somebody at work, your supervisor. If not, if that's not a safe space or you don't have a good relationship with them, reach out. Myself, there's other mentors, other coaches. One thing I do know about the other mentors and coaches that I know, we're equally as passionate about people not leaving the profession without having had the chance, you know? It's sad when you hear that people have come in and they felt so unsupported that they leave straight away. So as I said earlier, if you reach out to people outside your organization, if you cannot reach out to somebody inside your organization, that's fine. But reach out to somebody. Don't sit and suffer in silence or feel as though you're the problem. Our system of social work, it needs a reform. We all know that. And there's one thing to fly the flag for it and be proud of what we do, which many of us are, but also we have to look at where there's flaws.
Of course.
And our workforce having the levels of burnout, our workforce struggling to remain and retain staff and remain at a certain level and standard is very clear that things are not necessarily as perfect as they could be. So it's not a you problem. You know, you have to reach out and say, actually, this is how I'm feeling, and meet other people that have probably been through it like yourself or are willing to help you through the tough times, you know, so you can see the light, but don't suffer. Don't suffer in
Don't
silence.
suffer in silence and reach out to others
Yeah.
and share the experience because others are likely to have
Yeah,
gone through that as well.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. So where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work, Bianca?
So my website, biancamackay.com. So www.biancamackay.com is the best place. If you're a social worker and you want advice or guidance, you need some clarity on something, there's a free discovery consultation they can book in for as well.
Amazing.
So that's where you kind of start the journey. Most people have either started there and then gone into the side hustle or then gone on to retreats or whatever. So it's a good starting point. So www.biancamackay.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to appreciate you. I know we've had discussions a couple of weeks ago about getting onto this podcast,
Yeah.
and here we are today. It's happened.
Thank you.
Thank you again for supporting the Arise and Shine mission. I appreciate you, Bianca, and I know that you're going to impact lives positively. And I don't want us to end the conversation here. I know there's going to be another chance for us to talk. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.